Welcome to Dragonian, your podcast for news and updates in Hong Kong and Taiwan. I'm your host, William.
So let's directly dive into events that happened in Hong Kong first. So for Hong Kong, there are three pieces of news that actually affected Hong Kong the most. First is about the district council's term. So the Hong Kong's final piece of political puzzle for patriotism ruling Hong Kong, the district council, has finally been completed as the so-called the divisive district council, which the Hong Kong authorities consider them as like bad to democracy or something like that. Ended its term or have its term concluded on the 31st of December last year or in 2023. This also marked where this also marked basically where all democratic parties or all parties that are technically democratic or in the so-called yellow camp or whatever you call do not have any more public offices, as basically during the past years government have basically been purging other public offices or purging politicians that comes from the other side of the political spectrum from serving in public offices, with basically the Democratic Party or basically the district council being one of the last, well, basically the last ones where the pro-democratic people or the pro-democratic politicians will be able to serve the communities. This also marked not only how patriotism is ruling Hong Kong, but basically is a large step back from what people would have considered as the democratic development in Hong Kong, or considered as progressive ideologies, as we are seeing quite a lot of old faces, or especially those district councillors who lost in the 2019 elections, now being directly offered a job or secured a job within the district council, representing technically no one. So this is about the first event about Hong Kong, and the second one is a quite large or international that actually broke into international headlines and was briefly mentioned in yesterday's half year review. So so it is about Tony Zhong, or Zhong Hanlam in Cantonese. So he was he is the former convener, or consider this as a fact, of the student activist group Student Localism, which advocated for Hong Kong's independence and advocated for separation of Hong Kong from China. He got charged and indicted with crimes under the National Security Law in 2020 and served his sentence for approximately 2.5 years. He got released on the June 2023. After he served his sentence, he was technically a half-free man. However, with the Correctional Services Department's request or its plans to so-called monitor all these politically active elements, so he was basically slammed a 1-year so-called regulatory control, which basically he would still have some of the freedoms being deprived of. However, most of the freedoms won't. And basically, this was him, and he just literally vanished in the thin air after for his social media presence because of all of these restrictions. So Chong himself actually tried to apply for jobs and actually got offered some jobs, but those jobs were quickly turned down or basically quickly shut off by the Correctional Services Department, with Chong himself actually describing this as a financial control. He was offered, or he applied for visiting Japan, as basically he still got a de facto exit control, which he utilized, and actually fled or originally fled to Okinawa, and then he took a transit flight to Tokyo and left for London's Heathrow Airport. Upon arrival in the United Kingdom, he immediately applied for political asylum. After he applied for his political asylum, basically he continued his advocacy for basically reviewing the whole thing, reviewing how the Hong Kong government have been treating him, and the national security police have been interrogating him weekly for whereabouts. That even included non-political ones, for example, having lunch or having dinners with his former schoolmates. This is actually a close resemblance on the Stasi or Stasi of the DDR, East Germany, for them on how to control all of these political dissidents through instilling fear. So this is the second news, and the third one is about Hong Kong's unofficial ban of BL comics. So BL stands for Boys Love First. So basically, it's Hong Kong is now effectively banning BL comics from from basically publication, or not publication, from distribution. After incidents of students bringing BL comics being reviewed by school teachers on early November, for accounts for those comic store owners, such books were actually brought to the Obscene Materials Tribunal for rating as a quite normal procedure, and it's a standard operating procedure for all of these things. However, the tribunal rated these materials as category 3, which basically banned the display, the trading, and in some cases banned the distribution for viewing of such materials of that particular unnamed BL comic. Afterwards, the Hong Kong police, according to normal procedures, visited comic stores within a Sino Plaza, the go-to place for people obtaining these BL comics or comics in general, and requested store owners within the plaza to basically to discontinue the sales, or to basically warn them, so-called warn them warmly, or to remind them on this court ruling. Out of the administrative burden for rating these comics or sending these comics for rating, as technically they will need to send these comics one by one, volume by volume, for rating by the Obscene Materials Tribunal, so as to obtain a rating and to see if those materials can be sold. Most, if not all, basically some of them said all, but some of them did not, or maybe we don't know. So I consider that most of the stores have chosen to immediately discontinue the sales of all of these BL related comics after the police related such verdict by the Obscene Materials Tribunal. So it showed how conservatism, or in some cases, how conservative Hong Kong have become during the past year after the. I can't say this is a direct result of the national security law, but consider how the national security law are limiting progressive ideology and values. It seems that conservatism are on a rise within within Hong Kong, I would say, as we also saw quite a lot of incidents during the past 6 months. For example, for the Gay Games 2023 to be protested by a lot of conservative parents, which they consider that as a direct attack on the so-called traditional values of the traditional Chinese values, which technically it's like one male to multiple female. Interesting for that, but yeah. So after that, we will talk about Taiwan. So for Taiwan, there are basically not a lot of news, but there are still some. So first is about an election update. So the government in Taiwan organized TV debates, the only TV debate past ones are like election platforms, a platform for announcing an election platform. So this is the only debate technically. For debating, for the candidates to debate for issues or social issues. So in Taiwan's presidential debate, mostly it's actually about the idea of unification or conservatism, not conservatism, but the idea of reunification or the China issue actually is what differentiates one party from another. So for them, or for Taiwan's future, William Lai, by the DPP, defined Taiwanese independence as basically if there are two countries across the strait or Taiwan Strait, it is Taiwan independence. With Ho reiterating his stance of anti-Taiwan independence, a common term for the Chinese Kuomintang, and anti-reunification, and saying that basically staying the status quo would be the best option for Taiwan. And Ko, for the TPP, consider and stress the importance of providing goodwill gestures and trust across the strait with his slogan 两岸一家亲, which transliterated as it's one family across the strait, as his main ideology on issues related to the China problem or anything related to China. Apart from that, there are quite a lot of economic choices which actually delve into, for example, green energy, eggs, vaccine, corruption, and etc. So from a lot of interactions, it seemed to show that how the Chinese government, or not the Chinese government, how they are fielding or considering the Chinese Kuomintang and the TPP, considering that the government is riddled with corruption in the past 8 years. And basically made Taiwan a worse place than it was. I cannot comment directly, but most of the people or most of the international community actually appreciated the 8 years of ruling in Taiwan by Tsai. Now, apart from China, of course, and possibly some of those countries that closely follow China. The Democratic Progressive Party are also trying to promote the New South policy and societal inclusion of the new constituent societies or new constituent ethnic minorities, which I can't say they import people from the South, but basically a lot of people from the Southeast Asian countries migrated to Taiwan and became what is known as the new residents or 新住民 in Taiwanese Mandarin. And basically all parties are now trying to yield representation from this new possible like supporters base, with we consider the Democratic Progressive Party as the most progressive one and the most voiced out part for yielding or attracting support from this new community. The second news on Taiwan is a bit tragic, and that is about a tragedy that happened in New Taipei City. So a tragedy involving school students, secondary or junior secondary school students, happened last week, where a student stabbed another student and eventually killed, with the other student being pronounced dead hours or 20 hours after he was stabbed, for which this stab actually originated not from gangster but from a simple quarrel between two different students. And after this simple quarrel escalated, one of the students, the perpetrator, the attacker, showed or used a very sharp knife item, although not the ones that were popular in Taiwan a few years ago. Still it's considered it's still lethal. Stabbed the other student directly on the neck for 10 steps, or according to news media reports. And for that, the student being stabbed immediately fainted and even lost the heartbeat for quite for half an hour, or for quite some time before him being transferred to intensive care unit. Unfortunately, after quite some time, after 24 hours within the event or within the stabbing happened, the student still passed away, due to stabbing, or direct result from the or considered as a direct result from the stabbing. The tragedy raised concerns on the social safety net, as as people are very much concerned if the current protection for the social protection for youth and for the underprivileged people, or from the borderline youths, are enough. Furthermore, it also raised quite an issue on the authority or the power on teachers after the education reforms, which banned direct physical violence, or using violence to control students, and also removed the right for teachers to search students' school bags to see if they carry any prohibited items. Furthermore, it also raised into a quarrel and spilled over to the presidential election, where presidential candidates were asked and were being questioned for the youth policy, or for the youth, or how they are considering or changing the youth policy to prevent such cases from appearing again. Interestingly, the incumbent president Tsai Ing-wen, and the outgoing president also were heavily criticized on her slow response on this incident by the opposition parties. So these are the events that actually happened in Hong Kong and Taiwan during the past month, or not during the past week, as last week is technically quieter, I would say. It's still a very important thing. This episode is actually shorter than normal, and with most of the time being for me to being used to prepare the half year review or the 6 monthly review, this episode will also be much shorter. However, I still hope that you will find this episode informative as before. If you do, please subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss a single episode. Furthermore, if you have any feedback, please let us know in the comments, or drop us an email at william@dragonianpod.com. Thanks again for listening. Albeit, although this is a little bit later than normal, we will be back next week, next Tuesday to be exact, with more news from Hong Kong and Taiwan. Happy 2024. Have a safe and prosperous week ahead. Goodbye.